And we're ready to go. This is week 3 of our Ballpark Digest Live Chat, the Broadcaster Chat. I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler. Mick Gillispie will join me, and we'll talk about a number of different things over the course of this week. For example, we're going to start doing baseball lingo, baseball slang, each week on the show. And this week we're going to talk a can of corn. We're also going to talk about memorable broadcast booth experiences. What broadcast booths have we really enjoyed, and what pops up that Mick and I will never forget for whatever reason it might be. And also there's some congratulations to hand out as well. So let's add Mick in. And then from here, we can get started with the show as Mick joins. Here are the congratulations. First, congratulations with the organization. Double A and Triple A. Mick, you got your teams?
Yeah, working it right now. I'm just
okay. As we I still do not hear back from my voice to you.
All right now. There you go.
I think we're good.
All right.
All right. So before we start, and hello, Mick.
What's up?
I want to begin with huge congratulations to Mike Ventola moving up from the Reading Fightin' Phils to the AAA Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs, and then Kirsten Karbach for moving up from Casters, in a sense, even though they're owned by different people, from A Advanced to Double A, from Double A to Triple A. Big congratulations to Kirsten, and as well to let's get Mick re-added in as we lost a second. But for Kirsten, I was trying to think of any other women broadcasters I could think of who'd broadcasted at as high a level as Double A. Triple A is up next to her. But yesterday was National Girls and Women in Sports Day. So big congratulations to both Kirsten and to Mike. And Mick, that's something I really like when broadcasters, as they move up through the organization, it makes sense because the players are moving up through the organization.
Yeah, I mean, I heard what you were talking about yesterday, women in sports. We have a bunch that work for us. They did a graphic. And, I was so impressed that I didn't realize how many females we had here. I mean, they're just coworkers and friends and people that I like working with. But when I saw it was a pretty good chunk of our front office. Pretty proud of them for that. Really cool. And, you couldn't do this job without them. And it's good to see more women.
Kevin
in
Reichard
sports.
points out Frisco last season, Melanie Newman was with the Frisco Rough Riders. Saw that she put out on Twitter, hey, she's a free agent. So I wish Melanie well. Are you ready to talk some baseball lingo?
I'm friends with, yeah, I was going to say I'm friends with Melanie too. And, good luck to her. That was really neat watching her last year as a play-by-play broadcaster. I'd known her from Mobile. She worked with Justin Baker down there. And I thought she was more doing like packages and sideline stuff, maybe a touch of play-by-play. And then last year she was in it full time, and that was
taking a
definitely
bit more
cool.
time from Melanie. She worked big time with the Arizona Fall League, and then joining Ryan Rillard with Frisco. It's really fun for me to watch because back in 2005 I went to the winter meetings and I met Leslie Callison there, who had been the voice of the independent league team in Springfield, Missouri. And I said, she was trying to find a job, I'm trying to find a job. And we agreed to each other that if either one of us found a broadcasting job, we would try to bring the other one on the air with us. So fast forward 2008, I get my very first #1 working with the Windy City Thunderbolts. And there's Leslie. I'm right in her neck of the woods. So she came on with me to call some Windy City against the Gateway Grizzlies games.
Oh, that's really cool.
Kirsten, to my mind, has been a big-time trailblazer for more women in baseball radio broadcasting. And from Emma Tiedemann and Susie Cool and onward, the Visalia Rawhides just hired female broadcaster this year. And we'll see where things go from there. But especially with yesterday being National Girls and Women in Sports Day, it was worth recognizing. All right,
Definitely.
So each week we are now going to introduce baseball lingo. And it makes sense. You brought up the Baseball Thesaurus, and talking to Kevin Reichard, his August publications put out the Baseball Thesaurus. And you and I figured, what better phrase to start off with than a can of corn? Or do you say can of, or do you say can of corn?
I say can of corn. That's just the way that we said it when I was a kid playing. For a long time, I didn't know that it was reference to a stack of corn at a grocery store and a guy with a broomstick and an apron. I just thought it was an easy fly ball. It's something that my dad would say, and we'd go out and hit flies, and you'd go out there and shag, the easy ones. But it's funny when these sayings that we have that have been in the game a long time, we use them on the broadcast, and then people will come up and be like, "Hey, what does this mean? What's can of corn mean?" And then, when you first start, a lot of them are new to you. Hit it on the screws. Or you don't know that it's a golf term. I mean, you just use it. You go back and people will come up and say, "Hey, do you know what this means?" And so you learn a lot of that stuff.
I am somebody who hates saying the F. I will say can of corn. With specifics with can of corn. There are certain things that can't be it, right? It can't be an infield pop-up. And it can't be a fly ball to too deep outfield. The outfielder can't have to run all that far.
No. It's got to be hit right to him. And it's got to be kind of a lazy ball that I wouldn't think like a low fly ball is a can of corn. Like it's that, that arcing fly ball that's within, I don't know, 5 feet of the outfielder. You just reach up and catch it. Like it's no problem at all. Like you just never drop a can of corn.
Have you ever heard of the outfielder could have caught it in his hip pocket or his front pocket?
Yeah, I mean, I don't say that, but I have heard that.
It's the same sort of thing, though. The outfielder doesn't have to move. The ball is basically thrown to him. Like if he's a punt returner, it's a fair catch.
Is there any term, and I know we'll talk about this later on, I'm sure, in another episode, but of all the stuff that you've had to research for your book, are there any terms that you thought were one thing and then you found out it was something else? Like just say for can of corn, right? If you had can of corn, you were saying that on the air, and you thought it was, like people literally eating a can of corn or something, instead of, a broomstick in a grocery store and knocking it off the top of the pyramid or whatever, the top shelf. Has there been a term that you've researched that you were surprised at what the true meaning was, that you thought it was something else?
This might not be what you're asking, but in the clubhouse, I would perpetually hear guys refer to steaks. How many steaks have they had that day? Hey, who's eating the most steaks? Have you heard that term before?
Mm-hmm.
Steaks are RBIs because an RBI is a ribeye, and a ribeye is a steak.
Oh.
And so we'd have a coach who would come in and say, "Hey, who's eating? Who's the big eater around here?" And all he was talking about is who's picking up all the RBIs.
Yeah. When you have a good coaching staff, they make it fun for the players, I think. Particularly in the minor leagues. And Joe Madden does it in the big leagues too. It's fun to be around and see. But I love coaches like that kind of have their own thing, that get the players excited about doing something that helps the team win. And obviously RBIs are one of those things, or steaks.
I researched can of corn just a little bit because I've got my Dixon Baseball Dictionary right here. All right, so there are a couple of different alternate options other than the grocer back in the days reaching up and hooking that can of corn off the top shelf and then catching it nicely and easily. One explanation was Bob Prince, the broadcaster for the Pirates, saying it's as easy as taking corn out of the can. That catching a can of corn, it's easy to take corn out of the can. It doesn't slip in. And Bob Prince wouldn't say just can of corn. He would say a number 8 can of Golden Bantam. And it cost him once. All right, I'm going to bring you back to September the 13th, 1970. It's the Pirates leading the National League East, but leading it by only a half game, trying to stave off their competition. They're up 2-1 in the bottom of the ninth at Wrigley Field. 2 outs, nobody on. Willie Smith is the batter for the Cubs. He pops one into center field, and Bob Prince says this baseball approaches Matty Alou. There goes 210 pounds of Golden Bantam. Bad of corn. And Matty Alou drops it, puts Smith at second base, replaced by a pinch runner, and the Cubs go on to walk off the Pittsburgh Pirates. When I was searching, can of corns dropped. That was the first one that I could find where a broadcaster declared can of corn. and the outfielder dropped it, and it ended up in a loss.
Wow. Bob Prince was great too. He was another guy who I had the chance to listen to some as a kid. Love that voice, like that raspy, and you could get him at night in Baltimore on a certain station. I can't remember what it was, but I think it's K something. I don't know, but
UDKA?
yeah, I could listen to him. I guess does that sound from right? And so um, he just kind of was like all those old time great guys on radio, and it started with just an amazing like voice. It sounded to me like he might have smoked a few cigarettes or drank a few bourbons. I don't know if that's true or not, but it just sounded like it. But he sometimes those kind of sayings, people are like, "What did the guy just say?" I mean, who would have known that Bantam was, like you're confused, but people still like it. We still like it, It's just like I don't know what that means, but it sounds cool.
Well, you think about you mentioned the coaches who come in with their own language. Broadcasters, especially whether it's Bob Prince or Red Barber, also have our own language that people who grow up listening to your broadcasts, there are certain things that you say that broadcasters elsewhere in the country might not say that they'll understand immediately. And I mean, if you just, let's say, moved into Brooklyn in the late 1940s, you might not have any idea what Red Barber was talking about.
Yeah, well, that's what makes local radio local too. There's things that you learn in every city that are unique to that city. Baltimore has its slang and its accent and its foods, right? I mean, if you went somewhere else and started talking about steamed crabs, they might not know what you're talking about. If you go to Boston and talk about lobster, and Chicago, we have our things up there too, and uh, that's why local radios, I think, even though the business of getting information out there, including how easy it is to watch a game now, the radio's still something that's viable because we do like the local feel of
I got
things.
one more can of corn story for you. And then Mick and I are going to try something new on this week. In 1959, it was the can of corn court case. Are you ready?
Oh,
A
what is this?
player for the Double Play Tavern team, this is out of California, dropped a can of corn with two outs and the bases loaded, scoreless game, bottom of the ninth. He was so frustrated that he had lost the game for his team. He picked up the baseball, he fired it as far as he could, went across the street, and it hit a woman at the gas station. And she took him to court,
Mm,
and she won.
yeah, well, she should have. I mean, the game's over, and you can't use the baseball as a projectile, and and hit people that have nothing to do with it. There's been incidents in the game where frustrated players have thrown balls into the stands before. I mean, you know that. Um, I'd say sports in general, not just baseball, are super frustrating when you're not succeeding. And it really takes someone with a strong mental approach to be able to deal with that and a tough loss. Um, but that's not the way that you handle things. And obviously, you know, hitting someone across the street with what we could refer to as maybe not a can of corn, but it probably felt like one to her. Not a good thing. What year was that
1959.
again? Well, today with like Facebook and Twitter and social media, can you imagine that, if
Oh,
someone had a
yes.
video of that go
And
viral?
that person, that guy, his face would be everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. Well, people do crazy stuff all the time. I guess we just can't forget that people have been doing crazy stuff
That's
forever, not
right.
just lately.
All right. So, what Mick and I are going to try to do over the course of each week on this show, we're also going to try to break down broadcasts. And so I've got some saved up for us to listen
Yeah.
to. We'll see how this audio works out. But 2 days ago was Hank Aaron's 85th birthday. And Mick, you said that you've met Hank.
Well, I've run into him. Yeah. I mean, and went to Hank Aaron Stadium too, and have been down there. I don't know Hank that
But
well,
you've met
but
him.
we all love Hank. Yeah, but we love Hank. I mean, look, he's legitimately in my mind the home run
Have you
king.
been to his house? At the Big Bear Stadium? Okay.
No, no. Oh yeah, yeah. Well, hold on. Yeah, I have been to his house. I didn't even think about that. In Mobile, and unfortunately, Hank Aaron Stadium is seeing its last season in Mobile because the team's moving to Huntsville, and it's not a great stadium, but it's got a great name. And Hank Aaron's one of the 5 Hall of Famers from Mobile, which really is amazing for a small place like that to have Hall of Famers Satchel Paige, Ozzie Smith, Billy Williams, Hank Aaron, and you look at this, Willie McCovey, don't want to forget Stretch. They're all from there, right? And they were all kind of came up at the same time, which is even more phenomenal. But one really cool thing, one of the best baseball things that has happened in the Southern League since I've been in the league is when Hank Aaron's childhood home became available. Bill Shanahan, who was the owner, GM of the Bay Bears at the time, somehow got the home that Hank Aaron's dad built with his hands and turned it into a museum, and it's out front of the Hank Aaron Stadium. So you can actually tour it, and then inside it's got memorabilia from Hank and his family. And you remember his brother Tommy was a big leaguer too, so Tommy's got stuff in there. Really is a unique treasure. And I hate the fact that Mobile's not going to have baseball, and that that Hank Aaron Stadium is not going to be a professional baseball stadium after this year.
Hank Aaron, 2 days ago, his 85th birthday. I was heard, I don't know if this is true, that he actually preferred being called Henry and didn't like the nickname of Hank.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll tell you the first memory I have of Hank Aaron was as a kid. Father Carl, who was a mentor of mine, gave me a baseball bat, and it was a commemorative bat. I'm guessing was from a game in Atlanta, but it was a Hank Aaron 755 baseball bat. It was a full-size bat, and I just treasured that thing. It was one of my most treasured items as a kid, and I treasured it so much. And it had like Hank Aaron's signature on it, and it was like a Louisville Slugger or whatever. It was a great bat that I actually used it in a game and ruined it. So I don't have Hank's bat anymore, but I did, or at least that knockoff bat. But it meant a lot to me. So I learned about Hank Aaron early on, and I would like swing that bat around, and then somehow it got into like one of my 8-year-old games.
This April the 8th, this year will be the 45th anniversary of Henry passing Babe Ruth as the all-time home run king, hit number 715. And I've got a number of calls all about that home run. First, here's Milo Hamilton, and let's see how this audio works out.
He's sitting on 714. Here's the pitch by Downing. Swinging. There's a drive into left center field. That ball is going to be out of here. It's gone. It's 7-15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron. The fireworks are going. Henry Aaron is coming around third. His teammates are at home plate. And listen to this crowd. This sellout crowd is cheering Henry Aaron, the home run king of all time. 7-15.
Your thoughts, sir?
It was great. I mean, you can really feel the energy there. Milo, Hall of Famer, and a broadcaster that was in quite a few cities, as a voice. A lot of these guys, they were so good, they just stayed in one spot. But Milo, it took him a while to kind of find his place, but that was a great call. I mean, like I can visualize that guy, that hippie guy, jumping out of the stands and running.
Right, 2 guys.
Yeah, right. But he didn't talk about that. I just, in my mind, I'm just going back to that, I guess, because of the video. But it was a good call. I like.
Milo said later that, here's the quote unquote, "I had all winter to think about what I wanted to say, and he ended up settling on this. Whatever he would say, he would not say Holy Toledo." That was his line. That was his trademark phrase. And whatever else that came out of his mouth, whatever else occurred to him, he couldn't say Holy Toledo because that would make it about him. And he could only talk about Henry in that moment.
I don't know. You know what? I get that, but I disagree with him on that. I mean, look, Jack Brickhouse called Ernie Banks' 500th home run, and it's like, hey, I love it. I mean, like, I that's the only way I'd
Do you
want to
know
hear
Roger
that call.
Maris's? Roger
I would
Maris
hate
breaking
it.
Babe Ruth's single season home run record. And there's Phil Rizzuto saying, "Holy cow, he did it!"
Yeah, right. I mean, like, I get what he's saying, but I don't think anyone would be listening to the call going, this call is more about, Milo than it is Hank Aaron. I mean, that's what baseball broadcasting is. It's like these guys are in a city for a long time. People like those sayings and those catchphrases and stuff. And but you know what? It sounded good without it too. I mean, you don't have to have one to have a great
Here
call.
now is on the other side because the Braves were taking on the Dodgers. Al Downing is on the mound, and the Dodgers announcer was Vin Scully.
Once again, standing
Oh,
ovation
yeah.
for Henry Aaron. So the confrontation for the second time. Aaron walked in the second inning. He means the tying run at the plate now. So we'll see what Downing does. Al at the belt, delivers, and he's low. Ball one.
We have more of context to the at-bat here. Can you hear everything clearly?
Yeah,
To
yeah.
ignore
It's
the
amazing.
sound effects and stay a professional in pitches game. 1 ball and no strike. Aaron waiting. The
Here we go.
Beaten straight away. Fastball is a high drive into deep left center field. Buckner goes back to the fence. It is gone.
It's Bill Buckner and a Vin Scully call, 12 years before the '86 World Series.
Oh yeah. Hey, how about the pause here for the crowd?
Fireworks.
One guy's saying fireworks, the other guy's letting you
Vin.
hear it.
And this is radio.
What a marvelous moment for baseball. What a marvelous moment for Atlanta and the state of Georgia. What a marvelous moment for the country and the world. A black man is getting a standing ovation in the Deep South for breaking a record of an all-time baseball idol. And it is a great moment for all of us, and particularly for Henry Aaron, who was met at home plate not only by every member of the Braves, but by his father and mother. He threw his arms around his father, and as he left the home plate area, his mother came running across the grass, threw her arms around his neck, kissed him for all she was worth.
So we'll stop Vin right there.
Yeah. I mean, was Milo TV or radio?
Milo, I
that
believe,
day?
is radio. I believe Vin is radio.
It's radio,
I think that the
right?
only
Yeah.
TV was Kurt Gowdy. And I've got him ready too.
So, yeah. So, I mean, it's just like, it's so much better than I could have done. And I do this every day. He blows Milo out of the water too. I mean, like, it's not that Milo's call wasn't great. It was. And I could do a great call. You could do a great call. But that call was perfect. And it's like you just listen to it just as a professional in this business. And he
All
hit
right, let's break it
everything.
down.
And the most important thing to me is the historical significance of the fact that he went through what he went through because he was black. And when I look back at the whole thing and the whole experience that Hank went through, which wasn't great, even today, when I really feel like we're a better country now. We treat each other better. At least I hope so. I know. Now, I was raised in a different world than that. At least I was taught differently than people from back then. He framed it. And in 2019, it's significant. And it was significant back then. And saying it back then could have cost Vin. There's people that probably weren't real happy about the fact that he brought up that this is, a black guy living in the South who's passing an icon in baseball. And everything else in the call was perfect. And that's one of the best calls I think I've ever heard. I don't remember hearing that. I've heard of a lot of these calls, or maybe as much of it, or maybe I've heard it and I just didn't remember. But when I just sit here and listen to it, like the wheels in my head turn, and I'm like, you know, all the small details going into the pitch, then the ball's hit, then the home run, then I'm going to pause and get out of the way. You know, Milo's talking about the fireworks. I don't need you to tell me that, Milo. I can hear them. And I can hear the crowd. You don't have to tell me that. I can hear the crowd. Let them do the talking. And then to come up with just the perfect way to describe the situation where you're not being offensive to anyone, but you're being honest like a reporter, and then tying it all in. And then I've got this visual of Hank with his mom and dad at home plate. And it's like, I saw the whole thing right here. You couldn't do a better job than that.
For Vin, being able, as you say, to draw it out of the context and bring it to its greater context. Milo Hamilton called it in the sense of baseball, right? This is baseball history. And I agree with you. That Vin Scully said this is greater than baseball.
Yeah, it is. It's American history. And it still is the most significant moment in baseball since Jackie Robinson, because of just everything that went into that, you know. I mean, like, we still talk about it all the time. I mean, there's people like me that won't forgive the steroids era people because I feel like that cheating takes away the accomplishment of what Hank Aaron was able to do. He's the home run king to Mick Gillispie. And I've debated, look, I'm not the moral authority on things, but when it comes to cheating, and I see everything that went into that moment and that man's life, he should be the home run king unless you beat him legitimately. And I don't feel like that with the steroids people. And I don't want to see him get in the Hall of Fame, although they're closing in. But
all right.
Anyway,
let me give you one more call. This is Kurt Gowdy on television.
Let's do it.
This is going to be different than the other two.
He's not going to beat Vin.
This is going to be very different, but here's Kurt.
In his earlier days, used to hit more to right, right center than the left. Drive, balls are deep, it is good. He did it. That's who he is. It's the old-time home run. Bring it down.
So there you go.
Yeah, it's harder to hear. Harder to hear.
He did it.
But
he did it.
I could hear enough of it. Yeah. I could hear enough of it to tell you that it was very vanilla. You could feel the excitement, but to me that doesn't even compare to the two radio calls. But you got the visual with it too, you know, and the TV's a different thing. Because you have the picture there, so basically your job is just to frame the picture with a call. So I guess it's really not fair to say, hey, you know what? Let's compare this to Vin.
Well, it's true. I mean, all of us are working differently, right? We're all working within ourselves, and yet it's the same thing. Have you ever watched a group of great musicians or a group of great singers head up there and perform together? And one just starts going off, singing or playing, and everybody else just looks at them with admiration. I can't do that.
Yeah. Right. That's how it is with Vin. It's just, for those that watch this and are in this field or want to be in this field, his ability to weave the details in, tell the story, and then keep the game in perspective. But the wording that he had in those type of moments will never be matched. Never be another guy that can do that. And how ironic was it that the Dodgers just so happened to be the team that the Braves were playing when this happened to allow him to nail the biggest call ever. And he had a bunch of big calls with everything else, you know, all of the perfect games and no hitters and World Series and everything else. But I'm just astonished at how good he is.
I love the start with the introduction of Downing. That because he's the Dodgers broadcaster, he really is coming at it from Downing's perspective more than Aaron's perspective, until that ball flies away.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's tough when you're the home team broadcaster. And Vin never, he was the first voice the Dodgers had, so it wasn't like there was someone else that he's coming in after. But if you have a love for the game itself, and it really shows when you do the game, there's moments where you have excitement for the other team and the accomplishment that they're having. But there's certain markets and certain broadcasters that they're not going to give that moment the energy that they would if it was the hometown guy doing it, right? And I get it. You're going to go down into the clubhouse. Someone might not be happy with you. You got to deal with ownership. You got to deal with the front office, radio executives. People might complain. Everyone thinks that you're cheering for the other team. So there's a balance that Vin was able to strike where he could give that moment, he could nail it, and not sound like he was downing his own team. But I think when I hear other broadcasters, like you'll hear calls like, I don't know if you hear a Braves game and something happens, Jim Powell sounds like, someone shot his dog, and I get it. I mean, like he's the hometown guy, and he's on in our market, so I listen to him. But so there's a balance there. How do you get there? Or maybe it's your market too, like how much of your market's, are they okay with it? Maybe out in LA, the fact that that's what they always had is why he could do it. Or maybe it's because he was so darn good.
I think going back to it, it's the understanding of the greater context. It's the understanding that this is now bigger than the game itself. Yes, I've got a score to tell you about. Yes, these two teams are going to play, and Downing's got another pitch to throw after this whole thing comes to an end. But this is now bigger than the game I'm watching. It makes me think of 21-31 with Cal Ripken doing the tour around the ballpark, and then at the very end passes the visiting dugout, and there are all the Angels waiting to congratulate him.
Yeah, I love that too. I love the game just so much that there's times where you appreciate what someone else is able to do or how good another team is because you just love the game. Like when I watch Mike Trout play, I think he's the best. I don't think it. He's the best player I've ever seen. And I, grew up watching Ripken and Murray, Hall of Famers. But I've never seen a player who is able to do the little things well and the big things, the home runs, the RBIs, hitting the clutch, play the field, the bases, the way he runs the bases, his first step on a fly ball, when he steals a base, when he doesn't steal a base, how far his lead is, depends on who's batting and what the situation that they're in is. Baseball is so intricate. You know this, Jesse. You'll see a player and you'll say, okay, yeah, this guy can play. I mean, he can hit or he can catch or he can throw, but he can't play. Or maybe he can play, but why isn't he a great team player, And you look at it, it's like, the guy gets the worst lead on a fly ball, or he can't, or he doesn't pay attention to where this, or he doesn't have the right arm, or he doesn't know where to throw the ball and all this stuff. Mike Trout is so good. And I know when we do, Angels games in spring training, I'm like, Len even jokes about it. Like, I'm kind of like, hey, I do have a little bit of a baseball crush on Trout, but it's I just appreciate the game and watching someone.
I'll give you a different example. Last year, the Lugnuts are taking on the Cedar Rapids Colonels. I think it was last year. It might have been 2017. Colonels have a player named Griffin Jacks who is going into the Air Force after he completes the start. Basically, he's walking off the mound and right to the Air Force. And so it was just this understanding that, all right, once this game concluded, that was going to be the next step in his journey. And he threw a gem. And when it was time for him to leave the mound, he recorded the final out, he walked off the hill, and the crowd in Cedar Rapids understood, and they gave him a standing ovation. And it was just understood that this was more than this game in which he pitched well against Lansing.
Right, right. Yeah. I know those moments. I mean, we see him in the minor leagues where we'll know that a guy is retiring. We had one last year, and it was his last game and his last at bat, and he got a hit, and then they called time, and they took him off the field and replaced him. And his dugout knew, and some of the fans knew, but I knew, and it was like talking about it on the radio. I wish I could remember the guy's name, but for the life of me, I can't. But I just remember that happening, and to a smaller extent, but it's the same thing. It's like you just appreciate the people that are involved in the game, that wear those uniforms.
Segue into the final thing that we have to talk about today. Let's talk broadcast booths. Clean segue, right? Hank Aaron, Vin Scully, Milo Hamilton, bigger than baseball. All right, now let's get smaller, sometimes very small, depending upon where we have to call the game from. Let's talk about our favorite and also the broadcast booths that have provided some interesting obstacles for each of us.
Yeah, I'm in my broadcast booth right now. So if you want to have a quick tour, I can do that. Swing this thing around if you want me to. I'm lucky. The one at Smoky Stadium's great. It's better than, I'm guessing, like some big league booths. And it's as good as any of the ones that we broadcast from in spring training. There's a guy named Larry Blucher. I'm going to throw Larry a shout out. He was when I first got started in baseball, he was the broadcaster who was in Wilson, North Carolina before me. And then my first job was with the Wilson Tobbs of the CPL. They're still there. Well, there was a team in the league that didn't have a very big press box, but it had a very big bathroom in the press box. And when we were there, you could basically open the window and broadcast from in the bathroom. Larry made a video and sent it to me recently where he had some pictures of it and kind of narrated his story of being in the CPL. It's really good. And it reminded me of the worst place to do a game. Then that league, you would have to broadcast from, a deck in center field, but nothing like that bathroom. I'd say for the
broadcasting,
I know, crazy,
from the bathroom, right? Would people knock on the door during the game?
I don't know.
Not just to be polite.
Yeah, or who knows? I could take this so many different ways, but he actually had a picture of it. So I guess he had taken a disposable camera around the league that year, and so I'm looking at the picture, and it's him, sitting there looking through a window, in the bathroom. It's just odd, but that's low levels of minor leagues. The biggest mistake that teams make with their broadcast booth, and for the most part, all the stadiums in the Southern League are new now, is that they either get the windows that don't open straight up, and if they slide, that's bad. They just need to go straight up, or have one of those garage doors that you just kind of pull up and it's wide open, or the booth's really just too small. It's they stick you in some kind of a cubby hole. Give me a little bit of space. But I can't really complain about any of the booths in the Southern League. Same thing in spring training. I know the press box at Wrigley Field is going to be renovated, and surprisingly, it's really small, and the booths are just very steep there. But once you get to your seat, it's look, it's Wrigley Field. You're right up against there. The windows, they actually pull the windows out of that press box. So if it's cold out, better have a hat and coat.
Two quick Windows stories. The first one I'll make quicker than the second one. And the first one, I'm doing the post-game show, wrapping up the broadcast, and the window fell. Now, I hoisted it up to start up the broadcast. That way I could look through it. It did not fall straight down. It fell, and I'm going to show my head sideways. It came out toward me, and I got conked while I was on the air.
No.
It fell off the top part. Let me bring you to Quad Cities, though. I got through it. No concussion as far as I know. In Quad Cities.
Well, let me just stop right there. I know I'm not supposed to do this, but is that the worst injury you've ever had
So
broadcasting?
far. Knock on wood. Knock
Okay, all
on
right,
wood.
go back.
My computer has suffered far worse from a foul ball. Quad Cities does not have windows that open up in their broadcast booths, which when I first arrived there, I was irked, and then I was grateful. I'd never made a trip to Davenport, Iowa before. We've arrived, we're ready to go, I'm calling the game, and then the stadium lights dimmed. Now it's getting late into the evening, and I'm thinking maybe it's a flicker of something. No, it's the mayflies, which have worked their way down the Mississippi River, and they've arrived. And they arrived in a plague. So thankfully, I'm in my broadcast booth
Really?
with my sealed windows as the mayflies come. They don't bite, they're not harmful, they're just millions or maybe billions of them, and they swarmed everyone. They swarmed the players, the fans, and I'm there sitting back from my window as the entire window is now caked with mayflies. And I had to stare through the mayflies to call the
Really?
game, but at the very least, they weren't inside. They
Do they
played
play
right
through
through
the
the
mayflies?
mayflies.
Really? Wow. The visual on this, Jesse, and I can see him coming, and then like the batter's up there, and he's swinging and hitting him with the bat, and the ball's
And
like
I'm
smashing
trying
him.
to look through any way I can to try to figure out what's going on in the action because of all the mayflies in my way. And that is all the teams that have ballparks right near the Mississippi River in the Midwest League have to deal with mayfly season. So that's Quad City, that's Clinton, that's Burlington.
Wow.
It's right down the river.
Make a video of that and send it to me.
It's
That's
my
cool.
own personal horror movie. But thankfully, they don't bite.
Yeah, I want to see this.
The
Yeah.
worst thing in Quad Cities are the blackbirds. That we keep on making a trip there during the blackbird season when the males get feisty, and I have been attacked by blackbirds on my way into the ballpark. Yeah, they just dive bomb right
Really?
at your head.
Huh.
This is
Where's
Davenport,
this at?
Iowa. Visit
Wow. So in Davenport, Iowa, you run into like attacking blackbirds
schedule.
and
Just look
bugs.
to see because it's only this short little window during the year that you have to avoid the blackbirds.
Wow. That's crazy. I didn't know that.
In Clinton, Iowa, we would have where the broadcast booth has moved around over the years, and it's a historic stadium in Clinton. It goes back many decades. Clinton and Quad Cities, as a matter of fact, have two of the oldest ballparks in the Midwest League. Well, in Clinton, you know the old ballparks with the roof that's over your head leaning out and the concrete pillars that are supporting the roof? Well, I was sitting
Mm-hmm.
where that pillar was right in front of me. So I had to lean to the left to watch the pitcher and lean to the right to watch the batter.
Wow. Obstructed view at its
So
worst.
there would just be that short little period of time trying to figure out is it a curveball? What's going to happen? And hopefully I didn't get caught on one side or the other. Have you called games with the roof overhang? Because the most difficult thing for me is whenever a ball is hit in the air, trying to judge how far is it going to go.
Yeah. No, but there's a stadium in this league in Jackson, Tennessee, that has it's got this big net that hangs over top of the the roof, right? And it's not real tight, so it just buckles enough where you can't see second base. And so on fly balls, it's really difficult to tell how hard it was hit, because you're looking through this net, and it's in some spots you're looking through 2 or 3 layers of it. And so that's the toughest part, I think, of I can in this league. Uh, there's one stadium where you can't see down the lines
The corner is
somewhere,
obscured.
and you have I think in Birmingham or something, like it's hard,
Do
you
you
just
know,
can't see it. And so the guy will disappear back there, and you don't know if he caught
do
it.
you
You got
know
to
the
watch the
Chuck
umpire.
Thompson Seattle Pilots story about the corners and what he had to do?
Yeah,
He would hang a mirror, and that way, anytime the ball went into the corner, instead of looking down the line, he would go right to the mirror.
yeah. I've read that. He didn't tell me that, but I read that in his book. One season, those pilots.
Enough for ball 4.
Hey, that's all you need. Like, we
Do you
still
like
talk
to be
about it.
directly behind home plate, or do you like to be offset just a little bit?
Uh, you know what? It doesn't matter to me. If I'm directly behind home plate, I can normally call the pitch. If I'm off to the side, it's more
We have
difficult
one
for me.
stadium in the Midwest League, Bowling Green, where we've got the third base coach's box broadcast booth. That the broadcast booths are situated down the left field line. And let me tell you, here's how that helps me. And there are obvious ways that it hinders. If I see a pitch go right down the middle and the umpire calls it a ball, I'm not quite sure whether it's inside or outside. But that to me is one of the easiest ways to watch the runners rounding the bases and watch the coach catch their eye and give them the go ahead or not.
Yeah. 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 There's an advantage or disadvantage. I'll tell you, when you have a monitor with a center field uh, camera angle in front of you, you sound so
Yes.
much smarter. And I mean, like, not everywhere in the minor leagues, hardly anywhere really do you get one. But you do the games in the big leagues, and they have them everywhere. You know, they're right there. So um, you can sit there and, I mean, basically just you can just tell what the pitch is because you're watching it from center field. That to me is the big advantage. The biggest advantage of broadcasting is if you can get one of those.
Have you ever sat in a broadcast booth that you boarded the suites so you're right there with the fans?
You know, I was trying to find a little audio from the Cubs Red Sox games that I did last year in Fort Myers, and I have some good audio. I thought they turned out well, but the fans are so close to you there, and because of that and that echo that stadium has from where you sit, it's like you're sitting in the row behind the stands, right? I couldn't
Exactly.
use it. You know, like people are yelling stuff that doesn't, it's too loud. It just didn't sound good. You know, the sound quality wasn't great because of that.
There's one booth, one ballpark where I hang the crowd mic outside the window. That way I don't want to pick up any reverb from me, direct it right at home plate. And a fan, this mic was accessible on its cord, and a fan who might have had a little to drink decided to play a little bit of karaoke. He
Oh, did he
grabbed the
sing in there?
microphone and he just started crooning away.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I'm big into like having the ambiance mics. There was a game when I was in the Coastal Plain League that season in Wilson. We played Fayetteville, and now Fayetteville is a minor league city, right? They're in the Carolina League, but at the time, and they're getting a stadium. I think it'll be ready next year, maybe. I mean, we should know, all right? I mean, this is Ballpark Digest. So I'm pretty sure it's next year, and if it's not, it'd be either this year or next year. But I'm going to say next year. They're playing at Campbell right now, Campbell University. But anyway, there's a military base there. And I know about that because my dad, Phil Gillispie, was proudly in the 82nd Airborne, which is based in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And so I know about them. And we would go there and play, and the Joes, slang for the military guys, would have a little bit too much to drink and a lot of testosterone, and I just knew that the crowd mic could not stay because because the FCC has regulations on what can and cannot be said, and those Joes, they said a lot of stuff that really didn't need to be on the radio. I mean, you would just hear it and be like, did he just say that? Oh no, like, you know, like, or you get someone would text you, thank goodness I didn't get any fines, but off it went. And it was every time I was there. The first 3 or 4 innings are good, and then by that 4th inning, you know, I don't think they even knew there was a microphone there, but it would just be, it was
Kevin Reichard,
unbelievable.
by the way, checks in to say this year for Fayetteville.
Thank you, Kevin. Yes, I knew it was close. So no more Campbell. So whoever is the broadcaster in Fayetteville, just a little pro tip from Mick, make sure you hang your microphone far away from the
Have
jokes.
you ever had players hearing your broadcast? A field, a place where whatever it is, they can pick up every word that you're saying.
Hey, we had an issue with the sound system here. Oh, I don't know how many years ago it was, but I was coming over the PA. So, so it's like everything I'm saying is like coming out
Voice of
over the
God.
PA. You know, I couldn't figure out at first like why the pitcher kept looking up at me. And like you're trying to
Of course.
describe the action, you're doing this, and then it's just like, and then I see the manager look up, and then the umpire turns around and he throws his hands in the air, and it was like, and then it was followed by like that real loud like clinging sound, you know, like the feedback reverb. Yeah, that was interesting. It's happened a few times at the stadium, just on the wires. And then my favorite story about this, it has nothing to do with me. There's a show that was based on the 2008 um, independent league that lasted 1 year.
South
I
Georgia
forget
League?
what the league was called, but the team, yeah, the
Yes.
South Coast League. All right, South Coast League, right? Well, one of the teams was the Macon. No, the Macon Music were one team, and their arch rivals were the South Georgia Peanuts. And the South Georgia Peanuts were managed by Wally Backman. And Wally got thrown out of a game, and he heard the broadcaster talking bad about him for being thrown out of the game. And they made a TV show of this, so I watched it. But I heard about it first because Chris Allen, you know, and I, we go a ways back. He's the president of the Smokies, but he was also one of the, you know, founding people behind that league. So I didn't work for them, but, you know, he told me the story when it happened. Wally went up after the broadcaster, and Wally wanted to know, pretty much just let him know that he didn't appreciate some of the things that
During
were
the
said, you
game?
know, and I think the
During
word
the
unprofessional, I think it was like, I think it was like right after the game. But it could have been during the game. I don't remember, but I just remember hearing about it and then seeing Wally up there and just thinking like, you know, this guy's made for television. I mean, and the show's playing for peanuts. You can rent it for like 50 cents on YouTube, and it's like 8 episodes. It's so good. Trust me. For anyone that watches this, playing for peanuts. But because you get to that point where Wally's going after the broadcaster, I mean, it makes me laugh every time, just because I know that feeling. Jody Davis, I mentioned this last show, I think, told me that one of the players, and I don't want to mention who it is, but that didn't appreciate some things that Harry had said about him, and they had to pull him off of Harry in the Cubs clubhouse at, you know, Wrigley Field before a game, you know. We have a tough job, man. I mean, like, you got to go out there and do this, and you don't want to offend anyone. You want to be fair, and if you cross the line, they're going to
I
let
had
you
a
know.
friend who broadcasted no longer as part of the team, but he would say exactly what he thought. And the player complained to the manager, and the manager said, "Oh, let me hear what he said." And after the manager goes, "Sounds all true to me."
Yeah, I haven't had many complaints. I'm sure that there's been times where players haven't appreciated my opinion, and there's times where over the course of, you know, how many years I've done this, where I look back and go, you know, I could have maybe done a better job of framing that. Or, you know, we had one pitcher that got to the big leagues that had a weight issue and had a work ethic issue, but had great stuff. And it was just the frustration of watching this and going, this guy could be amazing, but he just doesn't have the dedication to do it. I didn't say that, you know, but you just know, you know, you can just tell. Um, and you know, sometimes you just kind of say what you think, you know, and uh, and you go back and go, you know what, I could have done that a little bit better. I think everyone feels like that. I didn't want to say anything bad, but just, or maybe I could have laid off on
It's
that.
it's a little different when they're hearing you while you're talking, whether you're through the PA, picturing that lazy fly ball to the left fielder, and there you are over the PA system going, can of corn.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it would have been. It probably would have been uncomfortable if I was like, commenting on someone's size and they were listening to me, especially when they could chase me down. That was many years ago, though. Yeah, but you remember that stuff. And I'll tell you, like the time that my voice was coming over the PA, the guys did get a kick out of it later on, you know. So but I hope it never happens to me
Have
again.
you ever had, as you told the Wally Backman story, you've seen managers get ejected or coaches get ejected. Have you ever seen them just wander up to the broadcast booth, the press box to watch onward?
Yeah, yeah, I have. One of my favorite managers that wasn't even on the team I was calling games for is Bobby Dickerson. When I first got in the Southern League, he was with West 10, which was the Cubs affiliate, and I worked for Chattanooga, and we had a big rivalry. We battled them for the playoffs, and we had Joey Votto and Homer Bailey and some other guys, and he was the manager of the West 10 Diamond Jacks. They were Cubs affiliate, and I mean he'd get thrown out of games, and I'd look over, and he'd be in the broadcast booth next door. So fast forward a little bit, I didn't like him. None of us liked him. Because of his competitiveness and the way he battled for his guys. Cubs go to Tennessee. I go to Tennessee, become the broadcaster. And he becomes a rover, not the manager, but a rover. But he would come and help out, and he'd come sit in the booth with me. I loved it. I got it too. Okay, this is that guy that you hate to take on, but you love to have him on your team. And that's in baseball, that's about as much respect as you can give somebody. Pat Listash got thrown out of a couple of games and hung out with me. The best compliment I ever got was because of a manager ejection. Ryan Sandberg was our manager. I had gone out the night before with your buddy Jim Tocco, your old broadcast partner, and John Laser, who's now the voice of the Virginia Tech Hokies. And that was a lethal combination for my liver that next day. And so just to kind of, this has been a while, but to put it in perspective, every half inning I would sprint out to the water cooler and just try to rehydrate because the effects of the previous night at Solitaire or whatever that place is in Montgomery, the underground all-night place. We're really kicking. Well, Rhino got thrown out early. I don't remember what inning. And the game's over. I get on the bus. I pull my blanket over my head. I got my pillow. I just want to go to sleep. It was a getaway day. I'm just ready to get home. I'm going to sleep this thing off. So Rhino gets on the bus. And he stops. And he turns. And I'm like, he's going to light me up right now. And he goes, Mick, I listened to the game last night. Or today, I listened to the game tonight, and he goes, I just want to tell you, you do a great job, blah, 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 and he goes into all the reasons why he liked the broadcast. And, I mean, and it meant a lot to me because he's not the type of guy who gives you a compliment. I mean, he kind of makes you earn it. And I looked at him afterwards, and I said, if you knew how many drinks I had last night, you would not be saying that. And I pulled the blanket over my head and go to sleep. But I appreciated it. But that was because he had gotten thrown out of the game, and he will listen to the game in the clubhouse.
On that note, we've reached the hour mark, and this concludes. This ends the third week of our chat. We've talked Henry Aaron. We've talked about Vin Scully, Milo Hamilton, and broadcast booths and can of corn and onward. And so big thanks for everyone for watching. Comment, question, ask whatever you'd like to myself, to Mick. Check in ballparkdigest.com, on Twitter at Ballpark Digest. And we'll keep on doing our Facebook Live chats. Mick, thank you for giving of your time.
Hey, we'll talk to you next week, Jesse.
If ever you hit a broadcaster slump, I know how to bust it now.
Do you? Oh yeah. Well, I'm gonna give you guys a tour of my booth as you close us out here. Like
Beautiful.
that.
From Tennessee, I'm
Like
in
that.
Michigan. I'm back
There
to
you
the
go.
field.
Ah, there's the
Hey,
stadium.
pitchers and catchers reporting
See ya.
soon. See you, everyone.